Hi, I'm Richard Felix, and I'm going to take you on a tour of some of the most haunted parts of Devonshire. I'm going to tell you stories of murders, suicides, black dogs, wish hounds, yeth hounds, pixies, and of course ghosts. So why don't you turn down those lights, give me your full attention, settle back, and let me take you on a tour of haunted Devon. I'm at one of my favourite haunts. I actually spent my honeymoon here at Whitcomb in the Moor. It's a very haunted village, and it's got a very haunted pub called the Old Inn. It's extremely cold. It is the beginning of January. It's too cold to do the story out here, so I'm going to make an appointment and I'm going round for a pint at the Old Inn. So come and join me. We're inside the Old Inn at Whitcomb in the Moor. James, you're the assistant manager.
Yeah, that's right.
You've been here a long time though, haven't you?
About 20 years now, so it's quite a long time.
Flipping heck. You've done a lot of things happen since we came here years ago. It is haunted, isn't it?
It is, yes. We do have two ghosts reportedly, but one really.
Yeah.
It's called Harry.
Do you know who Harry
Not
is?
really, no. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it's just a nickname that's been given to him over the years.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe the number of people that live and work with ghosts that just give them a nickname.
Yeah.
Oh, Harry's been knocking around,
right,
Jim's been doing this, Aggie's
right.
been, yeah. So it's a similar situation.
Yeah.
Nobody can throw any light on it though.
Not really, no. You know, we don't know who he is, where he's from, why he's here, or anything really.
All you know is that he is here.
He is here. Yeah.
And do customers ever say, see this old guy? Or
not really. We have one or two customers that sort of wander around and think, oh, you know, that's not quite right, or they feel something, but nobody's ever seen him as such.
No.
There's one or two strange goings on, but that's about it.
But you have had an experience.
Yeah, we had. I used to live in upstairs here, and I was the only person here. And my chef came in the morning and said, had I had a drink or two the night before? And I was like, no, why? We used to keep a big ball of string in the kitchen that we used to tie the meat joints up with, and he said, come and have a look. And it had been woven in and out, all the kitchen equipment, the whole ball of string, and it wasn't cut or tied in a knot anywhere, but the whole lot had gone right the way around and through the kitchen. So that was quite interesting.
Oh, just a bit. Now, obviously you went into it, you know, to see if anybody had been
crafting
we asked,
about. Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, the whole place is obviously alarmed and that sort of thing, so it couldn't just been anybody wandering in. But I'd asked all the staff, I'd asked the bosses, you know, had you been in? No, you're trying to wind me up.
Yeah.
No.
And why would anybody go to that? I presume it caused quite a bit of time.
I mean, with us just cutting it to get it off, it took us 10 minutes. Wow. So to wind it all the way through, it must have taken, well, in theory, ages.
Yeah. So there was definitely
something.
Genuine poltergeist activity in the place.
Yeah, you know, we have things fall off shelves and that sort of thing every now and again as well.
So he's just playing tricks on you, to be honest with you. Friendly ghost, really.
Yeah, he's never caused any bother.
What about Mary J's baby or ghost?
Well, there is reportedly a baby that cries upstairs. In one of the bedrooms.
Yeah.
Now, reportedly, it is Mary J's baby, but quite how, I don't know.
Because she was pregnant and reputedly killed herself.
Exactly, so she never actually had the baby, so what that's all about, I don't know, and I don't.
It's a bit of legend. It's the fact that the most famous ghost to do with the area is often branded as that's who the ghost is.
And I think, you know, if it really was Mary J or Mary J's baby or something, she's quite a busy ghost because I think she's around here quite a lot.
Then again, let's be quite honest with you, any self-respecting ghost or whatever would make a beeline for this place.
Well, you know,
come on.
It sounds like a very good idea.
Folks, if you're going to come down to Whitcomb in the Moor and you're around here, you have to come here to this pub. It is fabulous.
We have a good time.
Yeah, James, you're a gentleman. Thank you very much indeed.
Anytime at all.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Right, here we go. This is, I've just come up this sunken roadway here. It's a bridle path and I'm looking for Jay's grave. And I can see it in front of me. I can also see here on the left-hand side a spine, a bone. I hope that it's a sheep's. I'm sure it is. Gosh. I cannot believe this. There's a real grave here at the Crossroads. I'm kneeling at a crossroads, and the reason I'm kneeling is because it is such a windy spot. This is scary. No way would you find me here in the dark. It's really quite awesome. This is Mary J's grave, and it's situated at a crossroads, and it's a very famous landmark on Dartmoor. This girl was born in the workhouse at Newton Abbot around 1790 and eventually went into farm service. She was made pregnant, we know not who by the local squire, the farmer. But of course in those days it was a terrible thing to happen to someone, and unfortunately the father, whoever he was, wouldn't lay claim to the baby. Mary was working at the time in farm service at Ford Farm at Manhattan. She took herself into the barn and hanged herself with a rope from the rafters. In those days, in the 1800s, self-murder, as it was called, meant that you were destined for hell. People in those days were terrified of the church, and I genuinely believe this is one of the reasons why there are ghosts to this day. The church ruled by fear. So if you committed a crime, then you were destined to go to hell, especially if you were a Protestant. And unfortunately, Mary knew that by taking her own life that she would not get through the pearly gates into heaven, and that she would be destined to burn in hellfire. Now, given those circumstances, what would you do? Would you choose to go up there and try it on knowing you wouldn't get in, go straight to hell, or linger, stay here? And that's what they did. And because of that, suicides were not allowed to be buried in the parish church, were not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground, and were always brought to a crossroads, just like this one, and buried at the crossroads, usually with a stake through their heart, because the people in those days knew the situation and realized that their souls and their spirits would never rest. But if they buried them at the crossroads, when their spirits rose from the grave, they would be confused and not know which way to go and not bother anyone. But to make doubly sure here, they buried her at this crossroads, which is also the crossroads of the 4 parishes round here. So not one of the parishes or the parish churches would have been responsible. And poor Mary, of course, is still here, and I believe that her soul, that her spirit, still lingers to this day. People don't stay around here. People drive another way rather than going past this grave. And there have been reports of a figure, a bent over figure, standing here, and then as the people go by, the figure stands upright and then vanishes. In the 1860s, a road worker across the road was digging and found bones. Originally, they thought that they were the bones of one of the Dartmoor ponies. But on examination, they found that they were the bones, the skeleton of a young lady. And they ordered the bones to be reburied here, in this real, genuine grave of a suicide, here at the crossroads, overlooked by Hound Tor. And apparently, no matter what time of the year it is, whenever anyone visits this grave, there is always fresh flowers at the grave. I didn't know whether I'd find any or even whether I'd even find the grave, but it's here, and there's wreaths on it. There's even a poppy on it, and a cross and money on top. But just to make sure, I brought some fresh flowers here for Mary J to place on her grave, in the vain hope that she should at least understand and know we judge ourselves. And I'm telling you now, you can go from this place. Don't be afraid. Leave this place and go, as I'm going to do now, because I really, really don't like it here. It's a lovely sunny morning, and it's January, and I'm in Bricksome. I'm standing outside the Bricksome Heritage Museum. It was once a police station. I've been here before, and when I came here about 3 years ago, I unearthed some something rather macabre and something rather strange inside this building. It's haunted, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So, I'm going inside to meet Patsy. Do come in. Welcome. I'm actually in Bricksome Heritage Museum, but actually we're in prison, aren't we, Patsy?
Yes, this is a genuine cell, a genuine police cell.
You are or were the administrator here of the museum, but this was a police station originally, is that right?
Yes, it was opened about 1902 as a police station.
Yeah. Any deaths?
Not that I can honestly say yes, but I have a feeling that there was one, but nothing that I know of is documented.
No. But certainly no executions or anything. It
wasn't
that sort of, it was just a police station.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I see. Obviously, people that were to be executed would be taken to the county town, which of course was Exeter, I would think, in those days.
Yes, they came here and were held, and then taken to the assizes, and then afterwards, whatever.
Yeah. But it is haunted, isn't it?
Two of our members say yes.
Right.
Two of our very sane members say yes.
Oh, wow. And what sort of things happen here?
Well, there's a smell, a nice smell of, I haven't smelled it, of tobacco, cherry something tobacco.
Yes.
Actually, the curator has smelt along the corridor at the back.
Mm-hmm.
One member saw a figure in the doorway of the Maritime Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
I think she saw him twice.
Right.
And one of our volunteers saw a figure coming from the theatre next door, coming through the wall this way and then disappearing. And he was the only one in the museum, and it was locked at the time.
I presume he thought that it was a member of the public.
Yes, he did.
That you'd come in and, excuse me, it's time to go, sort of.
That's right.
Because that's what people do normally. They actually put it into reality, what they've just seen. Oh, it's a customer, not, oh my God, it's a ghost.
Well, sometimes it's very easy to lock people in this place.
Oh, of course it is. Easier than most places, I would think. But going back to the cherry tobacco, I was talking to another member of your staff earlier, and they actually reckoned that there was a policeman in the 60s that did smoke this particular sort of tobacco.
Oh, right. Well,
cherry tobacco,
yes,
apparently.
yeah.
Because obviously it could have been anybody with a pipe or something. Mm-hmm. Not these days, of course, because obviously people aren't allowed to smoke in public buildings. But apparently it was the same tobacco that this policeman smoked in this building. So he may just be a policeman that, I don't know, loved his job so much that he may still be here.
I really don't know about that, but maybe the smell lingered in the brickwork.
Well, you never know. That's a possibility. But I mean, the other thing is that there's nothing evil here. There's nothing nasty.
No, most definitely not. I mean, our volunteer said that the figure that she saw in the doorway was definitely a benign figure. There was no aura of evil coming from it.
No, I thought not. Now, 'cause the other thing, amazing, when I came here to see you 2 or 3 years ago, we were talking about, years ago, you actually had parts of skeletons of bones that had been found under the road when apparently the sea used to come farther up here in Bricksome. And of course, I think it was in the 1860s, there was a very serious gale and a lot of sailors.
That's right, the big gale.
Yeah, they were washed up because a lot of them were drowned.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Something like 40, I think, wasn't it, that were actually died?
I couldn't actually.
I believe it was.
And
I just wonder whether some of the bones that were originally here in those days could have been from one of the sailors, and because he hadn't had a decent burial then, that could have caused a haunting.
Who knows? I don't know.
It's a possibility.
I wouldn't like to say yes. I wouldn't like to say yes.
But you wouldn't say no.
And I wouldn't say no either. I mean, nothing can be disproved about
of course
anything.
not. No, it can't. That is fantastic. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
If you're looking for a good hotel to stay in while you're doing a ghost tour of Devon, then you could do no worse than coming here to the Smugglers Haunt in Bricksome. Obviously it's haunted, otherwise I wouldn't be telling you about it. Some very good ghost stories in here, and a mystery as well. So without further ado, let's go inside and have a look. John, we're now obviously inside the Smugglers Haunt. You've been here, what, 3.5 years?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it haunted?
We have our moments here. Put it that way, we do have our moments. There are books about Bricksome that are said about different ghosts here, but I have one particular story which I won't tell anybody. It's not written about and it's not publicised, but over the last 20 months, 21 months, I've had this story by 6 different people told to me, and the story's identical, and I won't tell anybody it, and when I hear it again, which I'm sure I will, I know it is genuine. So
this is something that only you know, or obviously your
and
staff
my wife
here.
Jean knows about, and not even the staff know. I won't tell the staff.
And people come down and report it to you after spending a night here, or something like that?
Yes, and I've had this, I say 6 times. It's just an identical story, which I won't, and when I know that story's told to me, I know it's not fake. I know it's not fake because it's not written about, publicised. No one knows, not even yourself, and I keep it to myself. So when that happens, I know that it is, and it's quite an eerie story. And this thing that happens, that people don't dream, it will physically wake them up, and they're wide awake. And when I hear it, and the people tell me this story, and they say, you might think I'm a bit silly, I said, well, go on. And when they start telling me, I said, well, you're not the first time to tell me this story, and that makes them feel better about it as well.
6 times?
6 times in 21, 22 months I've had this particular story.
And you're not going to tell me?
No, because I don't want it...
I quite understand it, because obviously the other stories that are documented, Aggie, is she the one that threw herself out of
yes,
a bedroom window
that's
here?
Right, yes.
In room number...
Well, the rooms have been altered. I think
Right.
It's up an upstairs window, which is now... but yeah, supposed to be... I don't know. We always blame when we have happenings that do something moves or that, we always blame it on the woman,
Yeah,
Aggie.
on Aggie.
Whether it is her or not, I don't
Yeah.
know. Only a medium
Yeah.
could tell me
You've
that.
got a chimney in one of the rooms
That's right.
supposed to be...
That is supposed to be a child. We've done some other paranormal teams in here, and when people go into that room, and a lot of rooms are identical, that one particular room, they all say the fireplace. There's something people that tune about the fireplace. It's just certain things about it. Always, and it's always. And we've got loads of fireplaces, but that one particular room.
Wow. And then we're actually sitting, purely by accident, honestly, in what someone's told you is the most haunted part of...
It's meant to be a gentleman supposed to sit here, and you get pipe smoke. I've actually, not for the last, I suppose, 2004, 5, where you could, sometimes you can walk through here and you will smell a smoke, but I've not had it now for a bit of a while.
Really?
But you never see it, you just smell a certain, hopefully I'll smell it again, because now there's no smoking ban, so that'll be even better.
Won't that be interesting?
Yes, that will be,
Yeah.
yes.
And isn't it supposed to be seen through the mirror as well at the back?
Yes, it's supposed to see him. You look in the mirror, you see him, and when you look at the table, he's not there.
Wow. Because mirrors are supposed to be portals into the other world, so it might be something. Maybe there at the moment.
Thank God.
And got the cameraman. So that's fascinating, because you see what you've just told me is the first thing you told me is far better than any of the ghost stories that I reckon we're going to get, because this is a ghost story that only you know about, and that's what makes it so real. I think it's fantastic.
I'm waiting to hear it again. I look forward to it because I know if I hear it again, it's genuine.
Well, if it does happen again, will you let me know?
Will do.
And you will tell me, won't you, when the camera goes off?
I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think about it.
No, don't. Don't, because keep it to yourself. That's fantastic, Don. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thanks. I'm standing in front of what is one of the most haunted castles in Devon, Bury Pomoy. I came here a few years ago, spent most of the night here, and I promise you it is a very scary place on a cold, dark, windy night. It was originally given to Ralph de Pomeroy by William the Conqueror. Many years later, Henry de Pomeroy rebelled against King Richard on the side of his brother, King John. When King Richard came back to this country, he quashed the rebellion. Henry fled and held out for a short period of time at St Michael's Mount. He eventually took his own life by bleeding himself to death, Roman style. There are lots of ghosts here. There's the White Lady of Berry Pomeroy, who is believed to be Lady Margaret Pomeroy. She was the sister of Lady Eleanor, and Lady Eleanor was terribly, terribly jealous of Margaret, and she kept her prisoner in a tower for 19 years until she eventually died. How she managed to exist for 19 years, no one knows. But even to this day, the old crumbled tower is still called Lady Margaret's Tower. And of course, it's haunted. Many years ago, a gentleman with his spaniel walking towards Lady Margaret's Tower, and all of a sudden the dog stopped. All its hackles went up, and it would go no farther. He even picked the dog up, baby style, cradled it in his arms and kept walking towards the tower. But it screamed, it shouted, and eventually jumped out of his arms and ran out of the castle. It had seen something that obviously he couldn't see. The battlements are very haunted. Apparently, Lady Margaret lures people up onto the battlements, and people have been known to fall over. There are also 2 knights up there. When the castle was under siege and they couldn't get out, they knew that there was no hope for them. They knew they'd be executed. They dressed in their finest armour, took the horses onto the top of the battlements, blindfolded the horses, and rode them over the battlements to a terrible death. And apparently their ghosts are still here to this very day. The reason we've not gone into the castle is because there are so many reports of film crews not being able to film. Once a BBC TV crew were here, and after 3 days of malfunctioning equipment, they had to give up and go to another castle. So, to be quite honest with you, if you're looking for an exciting, interesting, haunted castle in Devon, this is the place for you. I've visited an awful lot of churchyards and churches in my time, many of them haunted, but I must be honest with you, I don't think I've ever been in quite such a scary place as this. This is the ruins of Holy Trinity Church, Buckfast Lee. It's scary. There's something, I don't know, there's just something about it, that it's daytime, and I don't like it. You would under no circumstances get me here after dark. The place is an unfortunate church, to say the least. It was struck by lightning in 1848, set on fire in Victorian times, and then in 1992 arsonists destroyed the church and left it as you see it now. There's something, I don't know, there's just something about it. It has an atmosphere all of its own, and a legend and a story like nothing on earth. Squire Richard Cable, who lived through the vast part of the 1600s, was reputedly an evil man, a local rake. He terrorised the local women, locked them away in his mansion house, raped them, and God knows what else. When he eventually died on the 5th of July 1677, they say that the wished hounds came baying and howling round his house. Those are larger than life black dogs that here in Devon hunt in packs across Dartmoor, and they came to take away his soul. Usually, apparently, wished hounds, or yeth hounds as they're also called in Devon, seem to be going about the county looking for the souls of unbaptised children to take them to purgatory. But here, for some reason, we don't know why, they came for Squire Cable. The people were so frightened of the squire that they buried him in the strangest tomb that you'll ever see. And I just found that tomb, which is just out that door. So I'm going to take you to have a look at it. It's here. This is the most unusual tomb I've ever seen in my life. The Cable Tomb, the source of local legends and of inspiration to the author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. You see, when the Witch Hounds came to take away the soul of Richard Cable, these were the larger-than-life, big, black, shaggy dogs, harbingers of death. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle at the time was convalescing in Norfolk and talking to a chap that lived very close to here. They got very friendly and started talking of myths and legends, and it became the inspiration for no less than the Hound of the Baskervilles. But the people of Buckfastleigh were so terrified of Richard Cable, or should I say of Richard Cable's ghost, that they placed the body down below in this amazing tomb, stoned him up, and then put these amazing bars on it, and then to stop his soul from rising from the grave, they placed this huge block of white stone on top of it, because in olden days people believed that the ghosts or the souls of witches, wizards, suicides would not rest, and so if they encased them, they believed that it would stop them from rising. But whether it has stopped Richard Cable from rising, nobody knows. People say that they see strange red glowing lights around the tomb at night. Talking of stopping people rising from the graves, this was also a famous place for body snatchers or resurrection men. Being a very remote graveyard, body snatchers used to come here and dig up freshly laid to rest bodies. What they used to do was come along with a young boy and wooden spades, so that they didn't make a sound on the stones in the soil. Dig down. They knew where the head of the coffin was, and they dug a small hole down, sent the boy down who smashed the wood of the coffin. They attached a rope around the neck of the dead body and pulled it up out of the hole. It was illegal to steal the shroud or the clothes, so they stripped the body, put the clothes or the shroud back in the coffin, and took the naked body away for the purpose of dissection. And of course that's another reason why I believe that, to a certain extent, this is a very, very haunted graveyard. Not the place to be when you're on your own at night. And I must be honest with you, I for some reason, have been glancing from one side to the other of the graveyard. I'm just very uneasy in here. And I must be honest with you, can't wait to leave. I think I'm probably standing in the most historic part of Exeter, and behind me the most amazing building, the Royal Clarence Hotel. This building was originally the townhouse of no less than Sir Walter Raleigh, and it's haunted. It has a strange ghost, a coughing and choking ghost that still haunts the bedrooms. While Sir Walter Raleigh was living here, there was a Dutch sea captain, obviously in Holland, who had a terrible disagreement with one of his friends, and unfortunately this friend died before they'd made up the argument. Now, for some reason, the soul of his dead friend laid heavily on him, and actually laid so heavy that it affected his left shoulder to such an extent that he couldn't get rid of the soul of this person. Anyway, he heard about this man living in Exeter, Sir Walter, who breathed smoke out of his mouth. He thought he must have been a wizard or something, and he came over here to England, to Exeter, and made an appointment to see Sir Walter. He explained his predicament, and Sir Walter did no more than breathe smoke onto his left shoulder and released the soul of the man, and it drifted away from him and he was free. But unfortunately, the Royal Clarence isn't free, because the soul or the spirit of that Dutchman is still to this day in the building and still haunts one of the rooms. I don't know which one. People are woken in the middle of the night to hear someone in the room coughing and choking and spluttering. Obviously the Dutchman who was choked by Sir Walter Raleigh's tobacco smoke. But this is the most amazingly historic building. Anyone special and famous stayed here. Nelson stayed here when he was given the freedom of Exeter. The Duchess of Clarence, hence the name, who of course was the wife of Sailor Bill, King William IV, who of course was stationed up the road at Devonport. She used to stay here. And in the time of George V and Queen Mary, they actually allowed them to call it the Royal Clarence, after her, after the Duchess of Clarence. It really is the most awesome building, and if you're coming to this amazing city of Exeter, for whatever reason, a history walk or tour or a ghost walk, and you need somewhere famous, you need somewhere special to stay, then I suggest you stay at the Royal Clarence and you ask for the haunted bedroom. I'm now underneath the Royal Clarence Hotel in the cellars. This part of the building is actually known as the Wellhouse, and just round the corner here is an ancient well. Exeter, of course, is a Roman town, and I'm actually standing on the Roman level, and up here the Norman level. And guess what? This cellar's haunted. In the early 1900s, a gentleman called Richard Batstone was, I presume, out having a drink with his mates, and they had a wager that he daren't stay the night in the cellar underneath the Wellhouse. Well, they bet him £half a crown, and he said, no way, I couldn't possibly, won't do it for that, but I'll do it for 2 half-crowns. So it was arranged. He was going to spend the night here, and he came down here with one of his friends, and he said to his friend, all very well, great idea, but no way am I staying down here alone. What I suggest is that you come along, lock me in, and then a little bit later come back, let me out, and I'll give you one of the 2 half-crowns. Agreed. They locked him in, up went his mate, and Richard stayed here. But unfortunately, his friend, I presume, had such a good night that he forgot to come back and let Richard out. Until the following morning, when the drink had worn off, and his friend remembered, and he said, oh my goodness, I've left Richard down below. He came down to find him, opened the door and came in, and sitting in the corner over there, just behind the well, was a little wizened old man, long grey hair, shrivelled face, and fists tightly clenched. He came over to him and he opened up his hand, and clenched in the hand were the 2 half-crowns. They carried him upstairs, and when they got to the top, Richard expired. He died. Something awful must have happened to him down here in the cellar. And we think that we know what frightened Richard so much, because there is something quite amazing on the other side of this cellar, bricked up in the wall over here, just this way. In all my travels around the country looking for ghosts and the paranormal, I have never come across what's down here under the Wellhouse. What was once bricked up here in the wall in this alcove is a human skeleton. Intact skull. I mean, oh my goodness me. Now, why is it here? Various stories. People were sometimes bricked up behind the walls. People, certainly during the time of the plague, rather than burying them in unconsecrated ground in a plague pit, might have buried their loved ones in the house. Or, of course, the other story, suicides were not allowed to be buried in consecrated ground. And, of course, the city burial ground was just across the road from here. They wouldn't allow them to be buried there. Perhaps they bricked them up and buried them here. And, of course, suicides were bound for hell. And so, for some reason, the soul of that person may still be haunting this cellar to this day. But, of course, there's another possibility, because they're now pretty sure that this is not one skeleton, and it's part male and part female, and it could well be the skeleton of John the monk and Martha the nun that were taken away and brought here, and their bodies secreted away behind this wall. Perhaps we'll never know. I'm now in the most magnificent little courtyard, medieval. This building is now Ask's restaurant, but before the Reformation, this was an Annuella's college. Very similar to chantry priests. Their role was to say a mass, to pray for your soul, obviously after you were dead, on the anniversary of your death. If you had money, and of course remember Exeter was a very wealthy place, you would actually pay the Annuella priests to pray for your soul, to speed it through purgatory, to send it to heaven. Of course, once the Reformation came, all of that literally went out of the window. But this courtyard is haunted. Underneath this pot here, apparently, is an ancient well. And one of the priests had a liaison, for want of a better word, with a nun. Her name was Martha. His name was John. And of course, she became pregnant. And in those days, it was customary to wall them up behind the walls of a building. They knew this was going to happen to them, so they had a suicide pact. And they both threw themselves down this well and drowned themselves, committing, of course, in the eyes of God, self-murder, suicide. Now, they knew where they were destined for. They would not be allowed through the pearly gates into heaven. They would go straight to hell. In that situation, what would you do? Would you try it on at the pearly gates, hoping that St. Peter would let you in, knowing full well there was no way? Would you go straight to hell? No, thank you. I'll stay here. And they have. And they're still here to this day. Their ghosts still haunt this courtyard. Many years ago, this was a gentleman's club. And there is a report of one of the gentlemen here, and I believe before he had drinks, actually saw the ghostly apparition of a nun and a monk walking through the courtyard and disappearing through the wall. There's also a poltergeist in the top floor of the building here in front of me, who throws things around, bothers the cleaners a lot. They never work on their own, they like to work in pairs, moves their dusters, pulls out the plugs of the vacuum, and causes mayhem in the building. Who the ghost is, we're not sure, but apparently the name given to him, for some reason, I don't know why, is Ethel. And you're not allowed to say the name. I don't know why, but I'm certainly not going to mention the name, because I don't want him to follow me home tonight. So many amazing stories in Exeter that we've actually run out of daylight, and we've now had to go to night vision. Behind me here, this amazing medieval house with this awesome oak door. Behind the door is the most amazing medieval courtyard. And in medieval times, this building belonged to the Archdeacon of Barnstaple. But in later times, in the 1930s, it was split into two, number 10 and number 11. And this was the home of the Bishop of Crediton. His niece was staying here with him. And one day, coming home, I presume, from shopping, opened the door, went in, and a loud scream came from the courtyard. And the bishop's wife came scurrying out to see what had happened, just in time to see two medieval soldiers disappearing through the wall into this building. They both saw the soldiers. Now, the amazing thing is that in the olden days, in medieval times, this part of the building would most definitely have been the guard room for the soldiers who protected the Archdeacon. And it's pretty obvious that they're still here. But the amazing thing is this wonderful sandstone, red sandstone. The redder the sandstone, the more iron oxide there is in it, and of course the silica in it, and all of these properties are used in recording purposes. Is it a possibility that they both saw a replay, a recording of those two soldiers going through the wall into their guard room? I'm driving, obviously. on a road in the middle of Dartmoor. This is the Morton Hampstead to Princetown road. It's called Carter's Road, named after the contractor that built it after the turnpikes came in. There are many haunted roads up and down the British Isles, but this one here in Devon is as haunted, I think, as you'll get. Something very strange and something very eerie, and I'm just going to lock the doors because I'm spooked before I start. It's all to do with something called the hairy hands, and it originates from the early 1900s. The first instance, ghost story if you like, was of a chap walking back along this road, and like many people in the olden days, he obviously heard a horse coming. Not a problem, but it started galloping as it got towards him, and all he could do was actually press himself against the hedgerow and the stone wall at the side here and hope that the horse didn't hit him. It came galloping towards him, he saw nothing. Admittedly, it was night time, just like now. But not only did he hear a horse, but he also heard the noise of the saddle and the stirrups and the harnesses. In fact, it was being ridden by someone, but he saw nothing. It didn't hit him, it didn't touch him, it didn't brush past him. It just went by, but there was nobody there. And he hadn't been drinking. In the 1920s, there was a spate of accidents along this part of the road, mainly to do with motorcycles and fatalities. A chap was killed on a motorbike. Nobody knew why. The motorbike didn't seem to crash into anything. Then another accident took place. The rider was killed, but the passenger, the pillion, survived, and actually said that they saw a pair of large hands grasp the front of the motorbike, the handlebars, and wrestle with it. They were big, and they were hairy hands, which caused the accident and the death. The pillion passenger never actually got over it. It happened again a third time. This time it was a Dr. Helby, who was the doctor at Dartmoor prison, and basically he was going to Postbridge to do a post-mortem for another accident, not on the same road, and he'd got the deputy governor's 2 children with him in the sidecar. He was killed as well. The 2 children were thrown out, but not injured, and they say, both of them said, that they saw a pair of big hairy hands grasp the handlebars. People have reported seeing hands on their windscreens, and God forbid that I should actually see something now. The doors are locked, it's not bad, but you hear these stories and you think, oh yeah, you know, myths and legends, but could it be true? Oh gosh, nobody really knows. A charabanc in the 1930s, a bus, left the road and crashed into a ditch. Nobody was hurt, and again, the driver of the bus reported seeing 2 hairy hands on his windscreen. Years later, some people staying very, very close on the moors near the road, about 1/4 mile off the road, in a caravan. And one night the lady was she was asleep in the top bunk, and her husband was in the bottom bunk, and for some reason, she knows not why, something woke her, and she had a little window, a little slit of a window, and she said she got this awful sense, this feeling that there was something outside the caravan that wanted to hurt them, that wanted to harm them. And the next thing she saw, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, yes, the window was slightly open, and she saw a hand creeping up the window. Hairy, big, and 2 of the fingers started to come in through the window. She was wearing a crucifix, So am I. Thank goodness. And she clutched the crucifix, said a prayer, and it started to slide back down the window and disappeared. She closed the window, woke her husband, who, of course, usual story, told her that she was dreaming. But was she? We'll never know. But it's a frightening story, to say the least. The thing is, what is it? Disembodied hands. You hear of disembodied legs, disembodied heads, but not very often hands. I don't know quite what it is about Devon. It's a beautiful county. But when that veil of darkness comes over the moors at night, it takes on another role. These elementals, the elements, earth, fire, water, wind, I don't know, is it something to do with these strange creatures, these beings that have never actually been part of this earth, that for some reason take refuge on the moors and sometimes cross over onto the roads? These hairy hands that were perhaps never human, in the same way as the wild hunt, the wish hounds, the hounds, these strange creatures that still to this day dwell here on Dartmoor. For what reason I know not. Possibly there to terrify people like me. The door's locked. I think perhaps if I speed up a bit, whatever might be following me, I might just be able to outrun. This is the 13th century church house. It's now an inn and it's a hotel as well. I've been here before, had rather a disturbed night in here when I spent the night, but extremely haunted, very windy out here, absolutely fantastic inside. Let's go in. I'm sitting in the old church house, hotel and inn. It's very close to Ipplepen. This goes back to the 14th century. Just look at this ingle nook. Wouldn't you just love to sit and read a book with a glass of brandy in your hand in front of this fire? It's quite something. Very, very haunted, of course. But when Sir Arthur Conan Doyle met Fletcher Robinson, who was an old friend, they were convalescing in Cromer in Norfolk, and they got talking about black dogs. And of course, Norfolk is famous for black shuck. These are harbingers of death, big black shaggy dogs. And Fletcher Robinson, living of course in Devon, and them having a big history of black dogs, Conan Doyle was inspired, to say the least, and he actually came down here and stayed for quite a few weeks with Fletcher Robinson, learning about the hounds and the wish hounds of Devon, to such an extent that Conan Doyle decided to write a book, of course, about big black dogs. The chap that picked him up from the station and took him round for quite a few weeks, the coachman, was a guy called Henry Baskerville. And of course, the book became known as The Hound of the Baskervilles. This place is extremely haunted, like all the places that we've visited in Devon. There's a monk that wanders around the place, because remember, this was called the old church house, and the people building the church, which is across the way, actually lived in this building while they were building it. So there's this brown-robed figure that they believe to be a monk that's been seen in various places, and Darren, one of the guys that runs the place here, actually saw the figure. He was standing at the bar, his glasses on the end of his nose, and he sort of looked up and saw this figure in brown with a hood standing at the bar. He went to serve him, and then it just disappeared. Bedrooms are haunted. Bedroom 1's haunted. Bedroom 12 is haunted. One chap wrote them a letter after staying here, saying that he woke up in the middle of the night to see a figure standing, looking out of the window, pointing towards the church, but nobody knows why. A lot of the timbers in the place are from old ships, wrecked galleons, and they reckon that if you stare long and hard enough at one of the panels in the other room, that you can see the face of the captain of one of those wrecked ships staring out at you from the woodwork. So, pretty good pub, pretty good inn, fantastic hotel, very haunted. In 1086, William the Conqueror granted land here at Oakhampton to Baldwin de Brion. He was a Norman, and obviously he'd come over here with King William and was granted land to keep the Saxons under control. They built a fort here. They held on to the land until the 12th century, when the Courtney family took it over. They were a famous aristocratic family. Henry VIII had Henry Courtney beheaded and took over the land, and the castle fell into disrepair and has now become the romantic ghostly ruin that you see behind me. It's haunted by yet another black dog. Harbingers of death. They're seen all over the British Isles, but they've given different names. In the Isle of Man, they're known as the More Do. In Lancashire, they're known as Skriker and Trash. In Yorkshire, Padfoot. And in East Anglia, they're known as Black Shuck. But here in Devon, they're known as Yethhounds and Wishhounds. But strangely enough, they seem to hunt in packs here in Dartmoor. They're something to do with the old Norse legends, because most of the places where black dogs are seen were once Viking settlements. They used to tell sagas, stories of larger-than-life figures, and I think this is probably where they come from. Oh, so they're myths and legends. They're harbingers of death. If you see one, within a few weeks, you or a member of your family will be dead. So yes, only myths and legends. But only 2 years ago, I was doing a talk in Skegness, and a lady came up to me and told me that her husband used to work at an early warning centre on the York Moors, and he used to drive back to Whitby on his scooter. One night about 2 o'clock, he was driving along and he saw what he believed to be a large black donkey in front of him. As he got closer to it, he realised it wasn't. It was a dog, a large dog with shaggy fur, red staring eyes and pointed ears. He pulled out and drove off. It frightened him to death. As soon as he got home, he woke the wife to tell her of his fears. A fortnight later, both he and his 12-year-old daughter were run over by a lorry on a hill in Whitby and killed. So much for the myths and legends of England. This is reality. This is fact. So does the black dog of Oakhampton Castle also exist? I'm not hanging round long enough to find out. And to complete my haunted tour of Devon, I'm staying at the Whiteart Hotel in Oakhampton. It's got 3 ghosts in it, so an apt place to finish, and I'm staying the night here. There's the ghost of a cavalier that haunts the Tudor room. Apparently he was shot in there during the English Civil War. And there's a ghost of a mother and child. The mother who reputedly hanged herself here in the hotel, and the ghost of her little boy who's still looking for her to this day. Mother is grounded here because obviously she believes that she can't get into heaven, and the little boy is still looking for his mum, and apparently they haven't met up. On frequent occasions, both members of staff and customers say that they hear the cries of a little boy, and he has been seen wandering on the stairs looking for his mum. A few years ago, a lady staying in the hotel on 3 separate nights heard a little boy crying. The first night she heard him and got out of bed, came to the door and opened the door. There was no one there. The second night she actually saw the little boy standing on the landing. It frightened her quite a lot. And on the third night she only heard him, she didn't see him. And then at the end of her stay she was talking to a chap, a builder who was staying here, and he said he'd been kept awake during the night by a child crying. So it seems quite a haunted place, an apt place for me to finish. I'm staying the night. I hope I don't hear him, I hope you've enjoyed watching the DVD as much as I've enjoyed making it. As I always say at the end of every DVD, and I hope this applies to me as well, do sleep well, don't have nightmares.